Hello YouTube, this is Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review. Now, having done quite a few pale ales recently, I felt it was time to go for a darker beer today, and we're going to revisit the States for this one. This is one of the pioneering craft breweries from the States. I have for you today the Sierra Nevada Porter. Now, I've already reviewed the Kellerweis and the Pale Ale, both very nice beers, so I'm quite looking forward to reviewing this one. I'll put the links to my other Sierra Nevada reviews in the video description for you. A shout out to the guys at Thistle News on Holborn Street in Aberdeen again. For those of you who are living in the area of Aberdeen, this is a really nice little newsagent who have a lot of different craft beer, so you'll find their Facebook page link in the description as well, so check them out if you're living in the local area. But as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll just take you through a little bit of a history of the brewery itself. This is an interesting one because, like I say, it's one of the very pioneering craft breweries, but if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to fast forward towards the last couple of minutes of the video and you'll catch that particular segment. But anyway, the company was founded back in 1979 in Chico, California, when the founders Ken Grossman and Paul Camusi decided to expand their hobby of home brewing into an actual functional brewery itself. Now, this is considered, as I mentioned, one of the pioneering craft breweries in the USA. Now, Ken Grossman learned to homebrew at a very young age from the father of a close friend, and this hooked him on the art of brewing from a very, very young age. And in 1972, he went on a cycling trip with some friends in the northeast part of California, stopping off in the town of Chico to visit some childhood friends who were actually enrolled at the California State University in the town. And while he was on this trip, he fell in love with the town and the culture, and he decided that he wanted to move there. So in 1976, he opened up a home brew supply store named the Home Brew Shop, and then there he and fellow home brewer Paul Camusi got deeper into their craft brewing. So this was the very foundation of the Sierra Nevada brewery. But in the late 1970s, the choice of hops for brewers was rather poor, and Grossman decided to take things into his own hands, and he drove up to Yakima in Washington to buy himself some hops, falling particularly in love with the Cascade hops, and this turned out to be the foundation of the kind of hop-forward beers that Sierra Nevada are now very well known for. And in 1979, the pair founded a small-scale brewery, taking the name from Ken Grossman's love of hiking in the nearby Sierra Nevada mountains. So this is quite cool to know where the name actually comes from. But they created their first brewing equipment mainly out of recycled dairy equipment, actually making a lot of it themselves, and finally completing this whole brewing scheme in 1980. But Ken spent a lot of time actually ensuring that he could replicate the brewing process exactly, and that was the same year that the famous Pale Ale was born. Now, in 1981, the pair brewed the first Celebration Ale, which is considered by many to be the benchmark of the American IPAs. Now, moving on to 1983, Sierra Nevada opened their portfolio with 3 beers: the Pale Ale, the Porter and the Stout. And they also produced the 10% Bigfoot Ale, which is considered by many as being one of the first examples of extreme brewing, and it's actually a bit of a cult classic among beer geeks today. And in 1984, they purchased a new 100-barrel copper kettle from Germany, but they couldn't afford to install it for another 3 years. And in 1987, they purchased the plot on 20th Street in Chico that would house the 100-barrel kettle, and this location has been the home of the brewery ever since. And in 1989, they opened the doors to their now famous tap room on the site of the brewery. Now, the company produced their first wet hop harvest ale in 1993, and that same year they hit the 100,000 barrel production mark, and the brewery further expanded in 1997, unveiling a new 200 barrel Huckman brew house with the coppersmiths that produced the original kettle salvage from Germany being called out of retirement to actually make these things for them. So that's pretty cool that they've kind of kept the continuity going there. But Camusi retired in 1998, and he sold his share of the brewery to Ken Grossman, and they added a 350-seater auditorium to the brewery site in 2000, and this hosts a variety of events of different music genres and things like that. It's a music venue. But a beer research lab was to the exact scale dimensions of the main brew house was completed for the brewery in 2005, and the intention of this was to develop new recipes and improve their current brews, which is really, really cool. But for this reason, they're considered one of the, as I said, the premier brewers in terms of beer research and development in the USA. The USA is the cult home of craft brewing, really. There's some really cool things going on out there. But it was in fact the findings in their lab that prompted them to switch from twist-off caps to pry-off bottle caps like the one you have on here, and this basically protects the beer from oxidation, and this was one of the pioneering things in craft brewing. They were one of the first people to do that, I believe. But in 2008, the brewery introduced an event called Beer Camp, where the restaurant and bar owners come to the brewery for a hands-on experience, and this has become a regular event since then. In 2009, also saw the launch of the acclaimed Torpedo Extra IPA. I'll review that for you at a later date. I have a bottle of it. But this year, they also did a collaboration beer with Dogfish Head Craft Brewery, who I believe are from Delaware, and this beer was called Life and Limb. But the company celebrated their 30th anniversary in 2010, and to celebrate, they launched 4 collaboration beers brewed with a different brewer who helped launch the craft brewing renaissance in America. The brewers involved here were Fritz Maytag, Jack McAuliffe, Charlie Papazian, I think it is, and Fred Eckhart. And over the next few years, they launched some other beers, including the Hoptonium, which is a whole cone IPA, it's described, Ruthless Rye, which is an IPA, and in 2012, they also announced plans to build a second brewery in Mills River, North Carolina, to meet the growing demand for their beer. And interestingly as well, the brewery has a lot of, as I mentioned with some of the other breweries that I've looked at before, this brewery has a big sort of environmental policy. The brewery has been powered by solar energy since 2007, and this is 100% of their energy. And they actually won the Green Business of the Year award from the US Environmental Protection Agency in 2010. But apparently 99.5% of their solid waste is diverted from landfill to use in biodiesel in their delivery trucks, and they sell their excess grain to local cattle ranchers to feed the cattle, so it's really cool in that way. But they've had the same head brewer as well since 1983, when where they were producing 25 to 30 barrels a week, and that works out as 13 to 1500 barrels per year. But now the production is at 780,000 barrels per annum, so that gives you some idea of just how big this brewery's grown. But the brewery's core range includes the Pale Ale, which I said I've reviewed for you already, the Porter, which is this one, the Stout, which each of the different beers have a different coloured label. The Stout obviously is it's got a kind of orangey label in this one. There's the Torpedo Extra IPA, which is a kind of dark green one, and there's also the Kellerweiss Hefeweizen, which is the yellow label one. But anyway, let's get on to the tasting of this beer. I'm quite interested to try this one and see what it's like. As is usual, I'll just let you have a little look at the bottle art and stuff on this one. You can see the Sierra Nevada mountains on the label here. As you can see, this is the brown labelled one. They're actually really nice little presented bottles. As you can see on the top, there's just a little product description there. It says Sierra Nevada Classic Porter is a testament to roasted malts, which give it a rich, bittersweet and roasted coffee-like flavour. This all-American adaptation of the traditional working man's ale is well balanced and a perfect complement to a variety of foods. That's quite cool. I'm just having a little look to see where this one... It doesn't say on this one whether it was actually brewed in the North Carolina brewery or in the... Oh no, it does say on the front, sorry, it says it's brewed by the one in Chico, California. I don't know if that North Carolina one is up and running yet, but anyway, this one is a 5.6% porter, as you would expect, and apparently it's hopped with Aurora and Yakima Goldings. It uses yeast ale, or ale yeast, sorry, and it's malted with two-row pale, Munich caramel, chocolate, black and carafa malts apparently. So it seems like quite an interesting mix, but as I say, 5% ABV, this should be quite interesting. This is the first porter I've reviewed in quite a while actually, so I'm quite interested to see what it's like. Oh, I forgot the bottle cap. As you can see, the bottle cap is the standard Sierra Nevada one there, just a different colour obviously to match their beers, but let's get this guy open and get on with the tasting here. Okay. So let's just get this guy out and see what it's like. I noticed a little bit of sediment in the bottle when I pulled this one out of the fridge. I don't know if that's been there a little while, but anyway, it shouldn't matter too much. But as you can see, this is a really very, very dark colour. Let's just get some more head on this one. I think that's everything out there. So anyway, let's get a little look at this guy. As you can see, it's a very, very dark colour. There are some little sediment particles floating around in there. That's quite a common thing with Sierra Nevada beers, I find actually. Maybe it's just because it takes so long for them to be imported to Scotland. But as you can see, there's maybe about a finger of a kind of foamy kind of tan head on this one. There are some bigger bubbles in there as well. As you can see, it's a very, very dark colour. If I hold that up to the light, there is a sort of maybe a little reddish, winey coloured tint to it, but it's mainly, I would describe this perhaps as a dark chestnutty brown colour. It's got quite a nice aroma on it actually, but it's very, very malty, dark chocolate, coffee bean aromas coming off this one. There's an element of brown sugar in there. Not quite sure whether to define it as caramel or toffee right enough, but definitely some sort of brown sugars in there. There's a bit of sort of nutty character to it as well. and there is some kind of dark fruit character as well. Really, it's a really nice aroma. It's not quite as prominent as some of Sierra Nevada's other ones, but it does have a really nice deep aroma to it. It's not it's not quite as pungent. Definitely, it's a more reserved aroma on this one. But it's really nice actually. It's got a really nice smell. The head on this one is just starting to fade to a kind of thin layer now, as you can see. But yeah, let's give this guy a taste and see what it's like. The dark fruits are actually coming out first on this one. I didn't expect that. Yeah, the dark fruits are coming out in this one first, and the other flavours are coming in after that. This is when you're starting to get the sort of cocoa flavours and the caramel. Yeah, the dark fruit flavours are coming in first when you take it in, and then it's sort of progressing to the more malty flavours, the sort of cocoa, caramel and nutty elements, and they all have a good bit of roast character to them. You don't, in my opinion, you don't pick up the roastiness so much on the aroma. It's more in the taste I'm getting this, but you can smell the individual components like the chocolate and the caramel. Yeah, on the finish as well, there's actually a bit of mild hoppy character coming out, but mainly the thing that's prominent is the middle of this one, is you're getting the sort of mix between the caramel and the chocolatey malts and stuff with the nutty, roasty character in there. It's a really nice balance of all the malty flavours in there, and the fruits are coming out at the start, I think. But yeah, at the end you're getting a sort of mild hoppy finish to it. It actually has quite an earthy character throughout this one, which kind of contributes quite a bit to the roasted flavour of the beer. Really, this is a really nice porter, I have to say. In terms of the mouth, this one is actually very light bodied, and this is something I'm starting to notice with Sierra Nevada beers. The Kellerweisse was surprisingly light bodied for a Weiss beer, but it didn't, it didn't really diminish the flavour in any way, and this is the same. This is an incredibly light beer that has a lot of good flavour to it. I would describe this as probably light to medium bodied. It's really light for a porter, I would say, but it certainly delivers on the flavour. You get a nice little sort of twang from the carbonation on it. The mouth as well, I would say a little bit sort of it's quite clean, but it does have the element of creaminess to it. This is a really good porter. And as I say, it has what seems to be a signature mark from Sierra Nevada, in that it's a lot thinner than you would think, but it certainly doesn't let you down on the flavour, and the flavour is what counts, in my opinion. The feel of it isn't all that important, it's more the flavour you're after, but this is a really good porter. If you get the chance, I highly recommend you try this. I mean, Sierra Nevada, as I say, one of the pioneering breweries of the United States. Really, this beer doesn't let them down in any way whatsoever. This is a really good beer. I highly recommend you try it. If you're looking for it in Scotland or the UK, this one is actually a little bit harder to get. I've found I was only able to get this in a specialist brew shop. You tend to be able to get the porter, not the porter, the IPA and the torpedo quite easily in supermarkets, but the porter and the stout and the Kellerweisse are actually a little bit harder to get, so you might need to hunt it out a bit more. But if you get the chance, I highly recommend that you try this beer. It's a really good one. So anyway, but I hope my beer review has been informative for you. I've really enjoyed doing this one. I'm going to go away and enjoy the rest of this beer now, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel, and the usual YouTube stuff. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual stuff. Let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer. It's always interesting to hear that and hear other opinions on the beer. But you've been watching Goddard Radio Moscow. There'll be more Sierra Nevada reviews to follow. I have the Summer Ale 2013. I have the Torpedo IPA, and I also have a bottle of the stout that I need to review as well. But hopefully you've enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you soon. You've been watching Goddard Radio Moscow. Cheers.